Hey everyone, it's me, Ori.com Rashid. I'm an anthropologist and sociologist. I want to discuss this clip here that I've seen recently. I didn't see it over here on this YouTube channel here over here, but let me just play the clip for you.
I too am a fan of yours. I'm going to make a point of disagreeing with you so that it will be fun. You are so bright and articulate, and I guess I can call you articulate since you're not an American black. Can't say that about them. That's
Hold on a minute. Articulate, she said, and she associated with him not being a black American or is an African American. Oh, you can't say that about them, so why'd you say it, lady? I'm sorry, but there are enough black Americans out there who are articulate. So the whole idea to associate black Americans with not being articulate, I'm sorry, but this woman should have faced charges for this. There's not freedom of expression or freedom of speech. But anyway, let's continue.
that's derogatory. And that was a great opening segment. Lots of things to talk about there. Oh, and I agreed with many, many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president. But I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. We'll get back to that.
Hold on a minute. Let's play that back again. I want to know, I want to be sure if I heard it correctly. Okay? Hold on.
As you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president. But I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. We'll get back to that.
Hold on a minute. So this woman tells him, look, you're articulate, you're bright, I agree with you more. I agreed with you more than other, even more than with other candidates who were there. And a lot of other candidates were European American, or you can call them white. But still, she said, I wouldn't vote for you. And what's the reason? Not because of his criminal background, not because of some controversial association with some terrorist group, not because him being inconsistent in his lifestyle. I mean, those would have been more legitimate reasons not to vote for someone. So she agrees with him more than she did with other candidates, but the one thing that was a turn off for her is that he was an Indian. He was not white. Wow. And she couldn't shut her mouth about black people. She had to say something negative about blacks. Okay, let's see who she is. Ann Coulter is an American conservative media pundit, author, syndicated columnist, and lawyer. So she knows the law. So she should have known that making derogatory remarks like that is not a good idea. She became known as a media pundit in the late 1990s, appearing in print and on cable news as an outspoken critic of the Clinton administration. Her first book concerned the impeachment of Bill Clinton and sprang from her experience writing legal briefs for Paula Jones' attorneys, as well as columns she wrote about the cases. Coulter's syndicated column for Universal Press Syndicate appears in newspapers and is featured on conservative websites. Coulter has also written 13 books. Okay. That's her when she was young. That's her now. Age 62. Born in New York City, United States. These are her degrees. She's a Republican. That's the party she's a member of. But let's go to her personal life. Let's read. Coulter has been engaged several times, but she has never married and has no children. That's a contradiction right over there. You're conservative, endorsed by conservatives, but where's your conservative lifestyle? Okay. Now let me go back to here. Um, she has dated Spain founder and publisher Rob Gu- Guccione Jr. This seems like an Italian last name, so let me check that out to see if I'm correct. Hold on. Hold on, guys. No, I didn't try to do this. Okay, let me see. How do I go over there? And cool. Yeah, here. Okay. Never mind. I'm going further here. So, and conservative writer Dinesh D'Souza, Indian American right-wing political commentator, author, filmmaker, and conspiracy theorist. Okay, that's Indian over there. She should date an Indian. In October 2007, she began dating Andrew Stein, the former president of the New York City Council, so a liberal Democrat. Okay, Republican, liberal Democrat. It doesn't go hand in hand. On January the 7th, 2008, however, Stein told the New York Post that the relationship was over, citing irreconcilable differences. Okay, Kellyanne Conway, who refers to Coulter as a friend, told New York Magazine 2017 that Coulter started dating her security guard probably 10 years ago because she couldn't see anybody else. Whoa. So even the so-called friend is not talking that well of her. Coulter owns a house bought in 2005 in Palm Beach, Florida, a condominium in Manhattan, and an apartment in Los Angeles. So 3 residencies. She votes in Palm Beach and is not registered to do so in New York or California. Okay. Well, she's been associated with plagiarism, anti-Semitism. I'm not saying she is an anti-Semite. I'm not saying she committed plagiarism. That's the association she got to some controversies. And she's also, let's go above here. She also had issues against desegregation and so however you look at this woman, she has contradictions, inconsistencies. I mean, you dated a, a Hindu American before, was also right wing, just like Vivek Ramaswamy is a Hindu American that's right wing. How come you're willing to sleep with a Hindu American, but you're not willing to vote and empower a Hindu American to take leadership or take authority over your country? Look, I'm going to keep this brief. What you see here is example of an individual who doesn't want to own up to the error of their ways, and they eventually forget that there are consequences for being negative towards other people. Look, someone cannot be in line with your values and you still discard them at the end of the day because they don't look like you. That means that your values don't mean shit. So let me get this straight. This woman, Ann Coulter, would have preferred an incompetent white man to become the president of the United States than a man she agreed more on many topics more than other candidates. If you agreed more with this man on many topics more than any other candidates, and the other candidates were white, but you still would choose those candidates who you agreed less with, that means that for you it's all about white supremacy. That's all it's about. That means you don't care about quality. If you cared about quality, you wouldn't care less whether the individual comment quality was Hindu, American, Black American, Indigenous American, Asian American, Hispanic American, it should not have even crossed your mind what the ethnic background was. So people like this, if there is a solution, but the solution is not offered by someone who's classified as white, they will prefer to stay in trouble or danger because they would have to give credit to a colored individual. These are the type of people, and there are many people like her out there, not only in the United States of America, but elsewhere in the world too. Let's say you would have a medical doctor from Zimbabwe that came up with a cure for cancer. She and people like her would either try to link the cure to some white professor or some white funding, but if they can't find any white lineage to the cure for the cancer, they would criticize it, they would attack it, try to find anything wrong with it, or if they can't find anything wrong with it, they would just censor it like it doesn't exist. So they would rather have their own white relatives to die of cancer and to be buried, and they have to visit their graves every year. They rather have that sad outcome than to have their white relatives alive, but they have to give credit to someone of color for them being here. That's how crazy a lot of folks are. And Vivek here, he stayed calm. Because I know if this was an African American, what you call a black American, this happens to, it would not have gone so smoothly, let me tell you. On the other hand, people criticize Vivek for not calling her out, for staying too calm. I kind of agree with that, but on the other hand, he wants to de-escalate the situation. I get it too. And the fact that this woman even dares to say racial derogatory things about other ethnicities shows that she knows she'll be backed up. If she lived in a country where such remarks faced swift repercussions, she would not even dare to say those things. The fact she dared to say those things shows you that there are a lot of people thinking like her, and she knows a lot of people would back her up in case things got ugly. The fact she even dared to say things like this shows you what the problem is with the United States of America. And when you go back in time, and I'm going to do this right now, United States of America. It started as 12 British colonies. All right? And how were those colonies established? You had a lot of Europeans from Britain that fled to North America. And the natives that were there, the indigenous Americans, received them. Later, you had British coming and establishing corporations, and some of them became colonies. All right? So, then you look at this. It's the beginning of the United States of America, right over here. Oh, and most of what's today, the United States of America, used to be part of the Spanish Empire. Here, colony of Louisiana. Used to be Spanish territory, Florida also. So most of the United States was first French territory, then Spanish territory. So how did America become so big? Well, at some point, not only did they purchase the Louisiana territory from Napoleon, but they also fought a war with Mexico, the War of 1848. No, not the Anglo-Egyptian War. Let me go over here. Let's go to 1848. If I'm wrong about the dates, just let me know. 1848. Mexican-American War. Here, United States started a war with Mexico, and they took half of Mexican territory. This was Mexico after its independence from the Spanish Empire. You see this? Texas kind of separated from Mexico. United States annexed Texas, and then they wanted all of this also. And how come the United States had so many people from European descent? Because a lot of them fled from Europe in the 19th century, and while the American government was confiscating and robbing land of the indigenous Americans or committing genocide and massacres of Native Americans, a lot of Europeans just came in. So the United States is built on genocide. Simple as that. It was built on genociding the native and indigenous population, exploiting and enslaving Africans for the sake of European migrants. Nobody cared about border control and all that back then when related to the Europeans. So a country based on bloodshed, genociding the indigenous population, exploiting and enslaving Africans for the sake of European migrants who couldn't stand staying in Europe. If Europe was so great and so civilized, how come so many Europeans fled to North America? So a lot of them fled to North America, and they took land that belonged to the indigenous Americans who were massacred and genocided by the US government and US militias. Now, if your country has such a horrible, toxic history, you should be extremely careful how you talk about other groups of people. But the fact she is so confident in saying what she says means that a lot of European Americans, or I say white Americans, they are in full agreement with the genocidal history of the United States, because the genocidal history is why a lot of white Americans are there to begin with. If all those indigenous and Native Americans were still around and still had their lands, you wouldn't have had that many European Americans now there as American citizens. A lot of white Americans who have land now in the United States now for generations, all that land and all that financial leverage came at the expense of the indigenous Americans that were massacred and genocided. That is not a history to be proud of. But it seems like a lot of white Americans or European Americans are okay with this. Look, some say Rashid, it's just her. Now listen, it's her and Coulter that said this. It's not every European American that said this. And there are enough European Americans who called her out on and saying, what the heck are you saying? So not all European Americans or not all white Americans side with her. Absolutely not. But the fact is, there are many of them who do. And the many who do are such a high number that figures like her are confident enough to come out and ventilate the racial unrest. And one thing I want to warn you, when people, especially women, are confident in ventilating their unrest towards outsiders or towards people they consider outsiders, that means she knows that her own group will back her up, or at least a big portion of her own group. And if the women are ventilating the unrest, then you, I'm speaking as an anthropologist, you know that the unrest is growing in her own population. And once people are vocal about the unrest, the next step is to act out the unrest in physical violence. So this is not a good sign for the United States of America. Now, what would I have done? I would say, Miss Coulter, hold on a minute. What did you say? Did you just say something derogatory about black Americans? You mean the population that's been enslaved and exploited and will contribute to the build of the United States of America. Even Donald Trump, the previous president of the United States, admitted that black Americans or African Americans built America together with other groups. Are you telling me you are being hateful towards a portion of fellow Americans? I'm sorry. I would have called her out immediately. And if she would have said, "Oh, you wouldn't vote for me because I'm an Indian," well, I'm not Indian, but me being in his shoes, Vivek, I would say, "Okay, so, ma'am, you'd rather have someone you disagree with, that you might not get along with, to lead the country, than someone you're in full agreement with just because they're not of your tribe." This wasn't. This was a big opportunity for Vivek to call this out, and he didn't. I wish he did. What am I teaching you with this video? Watch out. And this has nothing to do with European women. Even though this is a European woman that ventilated unrest, I just want to teach you something. When women are ventilating unrest, especially societal unrest, then that's a symptom that deep-rooted rage and anger is growing in the population, and at some point it's coming out. So pay attention to women who openly ventilate unrest while they should know better not to do so. Because if that comes so far, that you know that, well, ethnic violence or political or economic violence will follow. Well, that's it for now. Keep on agreeing with Christ, guys. Be at peace and unlearn all this, all these satanic allegiances that you may have. Be at peace.